A lunar eclipse can last for more than 3 hours. The longest is 3 hours and 40 minutes. So when you go back, there I go again with this new moon, full moon controversy. Me and Bishop Nathaniel going back and forth on, and I'm showing him that he's dead wrong. It was a lunar eclipse that happened when our Lord was on the cross, from the 6th hour to the 12th hour, which was 6 hour meaning 12 noon, high noon, and the to the 9th hour is 3 in the afternoon. So he was on the cross during that time period. And so when he was on the cross, there was a long lunar eclipse. Now, this is what it says about lunar eclipses. Lunar eclipses occur at the full moon phase. That's when you see that big orange ball in the sky. That's called the full moon. That was the 15th day in the daytime because they ate the Passover on the 14th day at evening. So our Lord was crucified on the Passover. He was born on the Passover. When Joseph and Mary went to Bethlehem for the, not Bethlehem, I'm sorry. When they were going to Jerusalem, they were going for the Passover. In Bethlehem, that's where the child was born, in Bethlehem, but he was raised up in, well, Galilee partially, but he was raised up in Nazareth. So the scribes and the Pharisees said, this man can't be the Messiah, because the Messiah was born in Bethlehem, not Nazareth, not Galilee, not Jerusalem. He could have told them that he was actually born in Bethlehem. So he was, that was during the time where they couldn't find room in the inn, because go back to Deuteronomy 16 and 16, 3 times in a year. And one of those times is, to us, the most important time. People get up before it, is the Passover. So they came for the Passover. Then you had the weeks, and then you had I'm sorry, I can't even think of it. The feast of not unleavened bread, but Sukkot is in the Hebrew. Tabernacles came back to me. It was in my mind, but I couldn't get it out. The Feast of Tabernacles. So that's the three times in a year. So when they came, that was during the time of the Passover. Couldn't find a place in the inn, and that was in Bethlehem, and that's where the baby was born. So the baby fulfilled that prophecy. Coming back to this, it says lunar eclipse, full moon, right? It says lunar eclipses occur at the full moon phase. Now, when you go to, let me come back. When you go to well, it could have been a solar eclipse. Okay, let's go to solar eclipse. Solar eclipses only last 7 minutes. The longest is 7 minutes and 32 seconds. It says it can take several hours for the moon to pass in front of the sun, as opposed to a lunar eclipse is when the earth is in between the moon and the sun. That's the difference between a lunar eclipse and a solar eclipse. But the moment of total eclipse, called totality, lasts only minutes, up to a maximum of 7 minutes and 32 seconds. That's the longest. So you got to catch it. You got to catch that window. It's on the news. It's going to be solar eclipse. It's going to occur from 1213 to 1213 to was it 1220. If you're not out there, you got your goggles or whatever, you're going to miss it. Now, in the case of a lunar eclipse, depending on the time, it's going to be well more than a couple of minutes, 7 minutes. Longest eclipse of a lunar eclipse, longest lunar eclipse was almost 4 hours. When the Lord was on the scene 2,000 years ago, when he was on the cross for 3 hours. It says last only minutes. So we know that when the land got dark, we do know that it wasn't a solar eclipse. We do know that it was a lunar eclipse, right? It says the period, last only minutes up to the maximum of 7 minutes and 32 seconds. The period of totality varies because the apparent size of the moon and sun change depending on their distance from the earth. Let me try this. Can an eclipse last 3 hours? Now let's see what it's going to say. The total lunar eclipse it says a total lunar eclipse can last up to 2 hours. There was some other information where it says 3 hours and 40 minutes, while the total solar eclipse lasts only up to a few minutes. Let me come down here. Well, this is part of the same pull down menu. Search for can an eclipse last 3 hours? Let me click on that. Let me try this. Okay, that's a solar eclipse. Let's deal with solar and lunar eclipses. The longest lunar eclipse in century will happen. Come on now. The longest lunar eclipse in century will happen this week. And this is November of 2021. So we're talking a couple of years ago. You can see the longest partial lunar eclipse in hundreds of years this week. So it says right here, the longest lunar eclipse in centuries will happen this week, November 16, 2021. The eclipse, lunar eclipse, will last 3 hours and 28 minutes and 32 seconds, making it the longest in century or centuries, space.com report. So going back 2,000 years ago when the Lord was on the cross, we just covered how long the longest solar eclipse is. Not even 8 minutes. The longest lunar eclipse in history, in centuries, took place about 2 years ago, year and a half, 2 years ago. And it was all in the news. Okay? So can we establish that? We'll come back here. Let me go to lunar. Lunar eclipse, full moon. Lunar eclipses occur at the full moon phase. That's when the moon is a big orange ball. When Earth is positioned precisely between the moon and the sun. A solar eclipse is when the moon is in between the Earth and the sun. That's the difference. So based upon this data, our Lord was crucified on a full moon. What time of the month that was that? That was the 15th day of the first month of Abib. So does a new moon coming on a full moon? Hell to the no. See, and this, and Bishop Nathaniel is going to watch this, and then Pride is going to, you know what it says about a novice being lifted up with pride. He comes under the condemnation of the devil. He's going to let pride get it. He's not going to say, well, you know what, I was wrong. I'd like to apologize to the apostle Tahar for kind of going back and forth with him, and he's not going to say that. He didn't say it with the Cornelius thing. Years later, when he taught the Cornelius thing, he didn't say, well, I'd like to apologize for going off and kicking. We were wrong in kicking out Tahar and Kabar and, Ricard and the rest of them brothers. He never said that because of his pride. So I just proved to you that the lunar eclipse only occurs on the new moon. I mean, on the full moon, excuse me. The lunar eclipse only occurs on a full moon. That's when the moon looks like a big orange ball. All right? Got that? And when the Lord was crucified, he was kissed on the cheek by Judas Iscariot. He said, the man that I kissed, that's the Lord. Then they got him. That was the 14th day at evening, and they had just finished partaking of the Passover supper. So all that night, they brought him to judgment. They were cursing him out, this, that, and the third, bringing up evidence, false witnesses. And then coming earlier to the morning, they locked him down, they beat him, the Romans beat him, they spat upon him, they humiliated him, and then ultimately they put him on the cross. During that time period, it was dark for 3 hours. Full moon. Look at any. Matter of fact, you know what I'm gonna do? Let me do this. Full moon, just full moon. Let me do it this way. Anyway, a full moon is, where's it down? Let me do it this way. Images. Let me just go to images. That's a full moon, which is 2 weeks after the new moon. Anyway, with that, I'm going to say shalom. I'm on to the next one. Shalom.